Hello, this is Truth Be Told Transformation, and I'm Bonnie Burkert, here to share tools for transformation to live your highest truth. So today for the show, I want to talk about the transformation from being a high-powered career person to somebody that was looking for more balance in their life and still staying busy, but finding more peace in doing so. I can really relate to this story, so I cannot wait to hear the story of Reggie Hubbard. Welcome, Reggie.
Peace, Bonnie. How are you?
Namaste. Super great now that you are here. I got turned on to Reggie because he is going to be doing a workshop at Bhakti Fest 2023 in Joshua Tree, California in September. Ooh. So I think you're on Saturday maybe. And so that's the 16th of September 2023. So I'm super glad, Reggie, to hear about what all you're doing. And again, you have had an incredible career, both through college, your education, moving into political, working in the political realm, and yet here we are talking about namaste.
Yeah,
so let's go back to, I'd like to hear the story. So, take us back to your youth. Where are you actually from originally?
So I'm from Maryland, or there's no such place as Maryland. It's Maryland. So I'm from Maryland.
Oh, is that right?
Born in Virginia. So people like, you from Maryland? No, from Maryland, right? So kind of like the magician. So it's like I was predestined to be a magical being. So I'm from Maryland, went to public school here. Family is from Southern Virginia, close, like down in the southwest part of Virginia. And so my parents moved from Southern Virginia to the Baltimore metropolitan area. So I'm kind of like first gen in many ways, part of the second Great Migration of African Americans from the South to the North for work, and in the post-civil rights era. So I grew up cognizant of certain racial things, but because I grew up in the burbs, it was kind of like a peaceful place, but there was still evidences of racism. So I mentioned that because I've always had a bit of an activist streak. So was like class president in high school for 3 years straight, from sophomore through senior year. First in my family to go to college, went to Yale. This is in the days when people were just like, you only got in because of affirmative action. I was like, and because I'm smarter than you.
Well, right.
So right. So I didn't fake those numbers on the SAT, dog. Like, like the kid is smart as well. And so for like the first part of my life, I would say my success was fueled by the need or the perceived need to prove people wrong. Okay. So, black men can't do this, blah, blah, all these things that was good fuel when I was younger. But around mid-30s or so, that anger had begun to take a corrosive effect.
Yeah.
Right. So I had stress-induced eczema that had like white patches and all these different things because like the fuel that I was using was actually incinerating me from the inside. And that also like led to like crippling spirals of self-doubt and all these things because my means of processing the world was undigested anger. And so luckily around 38 or so, didn't get a job that I thought that I was a shoo-in to get. Because it sent me spiraling again, but for whatever reason, I had a bit of awareness, and I was like, "We got to deconstruct this spiral, man." You know what I mean? Like we've been, you know how you have those moments in life where you're like, "I'm breaking this cycle. Like this ain't it no more." Like I can now see that it may have served a purpose prior to, but going henceforward, we ain't doing this no more. And so, like, changed my diet and started living with the motto that my health and well-being is sacred, as such it will be foundational in my life, which is a pretty revolutionary thing to say in a political world, right? Which like seems to honor martyrdom and distortion. So started making those commitments to diet and well-being, which begat my yoga practice, which begat my meditation practice, which begat the fusion of the two. And so nowadays I essentially advise wellness folks on social justice stuff. So for those happy-go-lucky folks, it's like peace and blessing. I was like, that's not necessarily true for all of us. And I encountered yoga as a practice of liberation. You know what I mean? Liberation from societal structures that would seek to destroy me. And so I'm somewhat confrontational with yoga folks who are like, peace and blessing, everything's love and light. I was like, not in this realm for all people. And so what I've been able to do is get yoga folks more activists, but also bring peace practices to political folks, because those on the front lines of social justice have delightful hearts, but horrific habits. And so like, if we can give them peace practice, and as they do their work, they won't burn themselves out, and we'll be able to make sustainable change.
Yeah, no, this is really, really great. And I applaud you. And it's interesting because you mentioned 38, because it was around the same time for me that
cool.
I was studying, I had been taking class. So this is where I'm going to mention that my yoga teacher in New York City was Dharma Mittra. Were you living in Manhattan at that time? So Sri Dharma Mittra, were you there at that time?
Just his people. He has a pretty strong cohort in Washington.
Great.
And he comes through DC a lot.
Yeah, right on. Well, I had been studying with him since the, probably late 80s in Manhattan. And for me, it was, I just once asked him how much yoga he did every day. And right, exactly. That's what he did. So if you're just listening and not watching on YouTube, Reggie's laughing at me with that question and Dharma Mittra also laughed. Like, I am always doing yoga.
Right.
All is yoga. And I was like,
right.
oh. And so that's when it sort of became off the mat, a bigger, broader. Mm-hmm. And things changed very quickly for me. I mean, once I sort of had that perspective shift. And it sounds like with you, it maybe started a little bit with, ailments, like you had to really catch. And for me, I think it was just, I think I was noticing, I like to refer to it as things weren't tasting as good. And I don't mean actual food. I mean, maybe the music.
Life lost its savor.
Right. The music I was working was kind of like, I've already heard that. Yeah. I don't need any more CDs. And it was just very interesting to feel that shift, and not pleasant, by the way. You lose friends. You don't know where you belong anymore.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm sure that you can relate. I mean, is this kind of a hero's journey thing? I don't know what to call it exactly, but it is an awakening. And I think that the point you want to make to everybody, it's not always sweetness and light.
No, it's not. And that's awesome, actually, because like what yoga and meditation have become for me are tools that I use all the time. So when I'm joyous, I'm practicing. When I'm not joyous, I'm practicing to create space, to figure out ways to solve problems or to release past hurts or those sorts of things. And if we don't embrace the entirety of life, we're living in delusion, which is a pinnacle of suffering.
Right. No, it's true. And I mean, and think about what we learned from the Hindu deities, right? We've got the Durgas and Kali.
Right over there.
Oh, well, there you go, right? So,
yep.
Right? Destruction. I mean, that's kind of part of nature.
And it has to happen in order for things to be reborn, right? So, like, destruction and demise have to happen for something to be reborn into a new evolved form. A lot of the social ills that we have in our lives right now are derivative of systems that are defunct, right? So like the universe is beckoning us to like evolve, like to like go from this individualistic thing to a more communitarian thing, and not only communitarian, but a community based on people for whom wellness and self is a pinnacle, and from that wellness, we can serve each other from our abundance. And so that's kind of how I'm moving through the world right now.
So let's take it back to when you first started figuring things out. How did it go for you? Because you're working, you're rubbing elbows with world leaders.
Right.
Okay, so, but really what you want to be is back in your hotel room or, on the yoga mat. How did it, tell us a little bit about how one makes the adjustment. Once you start to realize this isn't really me anymore.
Yeah.
But you don't know what it's going to look like. It's like, wow, I'm in my late 30s. I've still got years and years to go. What am I going to do? Especially when you're on a good career path. You're on a good, strong trajectory.
Yeah. And so the thing about that is I noticed early on that my good jobs were killing me. right? And so, and in terms of figuring it out, for better or for worse, I majored in existential philosophy in college. So I've been kind of brooding since I was 17 years old. And so I've been in a bit of a contemplative spot for all of my life. So the beauty, so deeper in the origin story is that like, politics and I have been kind of touch and go for a while. Like I would always get to a certain level and then like hit a ceiling and I would have to go out and come back in a new way. I had left politics altogether in 2014 and moved to Denver, Colorado to work for a small nonprofit that did international exchange with Brazilian students and American college students. And so I took this job and I thought it was a beautiful job, and it was a beautiful job and it was a beautiful experience. But on day 6, that job went from awesome to awful.
Oh, no.
And I had just started practicing yoga 2.5 months prior. So the blessing of going from a great job to a crap job at the beginning of your yoga practice is that you learn sadhana, like you learn like discipline. You learn the discipline of using the practice to sublimate and transmute negativity. And so my job was so terrible that I would go to yoga twice a day, at the top of the day and at the bottom of the day, and in between endure one of the levels of hell from Dante, because the job just sucked that much. But what I didn't know was happening is that the discipline was making me a yogi and not a yoga, like yoga was becoming my lifestyle.
Yes.
And so that integration of physical practice and grace and all these things at the beginning of my yoga practice is different than a lot of folks. So like I didn't see it as recreation. It was a tool of liberation. And then when I went back into political world, so after I got fired from that job via text message, and they asked me for an exit interview. Now it was just awful, but like comically awful, like how not to treat your employees kind of thing. So I got fired via text message, and they asked me for an exit interview. And it's just total cognitive dissonance, right? And I was like, thank you for the invitation, but we don't need an exit interview. You know that, right? Like, we really don't need to talk, but I want to thank you. And they're like, for what? I want to thank you for how poorly you treated me, because you gave me wisdom, and that wisdom has transformed my life. So thank you for the adversity, because I now know how to handle adversity with grace. And then left the room. And then that's after 10 months of practicing yoga. So like, I called my mom and my aunt afterwards and was just like, so this yoga thing is so wild. I thanked my boss for firing me via text message and wished them well. Like I went from wanting to curse them out to giving them so just I realized that something was there. I grew up in the church, the Baptist church, and when after that firing, I wanted to cleanse. So I basically went on a water-only cleanse from September 30th, 2015 to October 5th, which was my birthday. And I was like, when I break this fast, whatever's meant for me will happen. And the universe, God, goddess, whatever you want to call them, have such a sense of humor. I got a phone call from the Bernie Sanders campaign on my birthday when I broke my fast. And I was just like, I'm leaving politics, man. Like, damn, you know what I mean? Like but the universe is like, no, you're not. And so when I joined the Bernie Sanders campaign, I had some trepidation because remember, like all my political work had led me to all these bad habits. You know, like at the height of my political work, I was like chain smoking, drinking bourbon for breakfast and working 18 hours a day, right? And so going back into that world, I was terrified. But one of my yoga teachers, blessings to Jeremy was like, Reggie, you have such discipline. I'm not worried about tapas, brother. Like you have got such discipline. Maybe this can be your karmic mulligan. And I was like,
Shift.
Love that terminology, man. So I can go back into the thing that almost killed me with grace and practice and just have a chance to address demons to find liberation. So that's kind of what happened.
Super cool. And I mean, also it was the Bernie Sanders campaign. So,
You're
I mean, it was, and I don't know who all you were dealing with prior, and you would had how much of a break in between? Just about a year?
It was about a year and change, right.
But interesting for you to, it was like a palate cleanse, even though what needed, Even though what was happening to you didn't taste good at all, speaking of things not tasting good. But no, it's really great. It's really, you figured out how to work it out. And I mean, using your yoga practice as a tool, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of it, it could be used certainly as a tool for fitness, but you used it beyond just that. I mean, it was more transcendent for you. So, and what a campaign, what a team to have been working with. And I'm sure it was challenging, but rewarding as can be, right?
It fulfilled for me like the promise of yoga in like so many different ways, meaning there was reconciliation and liberation in many fronts. So I can go back to the thing that I was terrified because of harm that I did myself and emerge triumphant. Like, you want to talk about some hero's journey stuff. That's wicked crazy, right? And then I was able to, at various points because I was on the campaign trail producing big shows.
Amazing.
Right? So a lot of the big shows where we would have 10,000, 15,000 people, like I was like EP on those things. And so EP is executive producer for those of you that aren't in the business. But like, I was able to either through producing, I produced Bernie Sanders' concession at the DNC and his keynote speech at the DNC in 2016.
Epic.
And had worked for the DNC in the past. So there were these concentric circles, synchronicity, and it was just this whole, I felt like I was living the Upanishads. You know what I mean? So like this is happening in this moment, but it's addressing this, which allows for the future. Like it was just this whole synergistic experience that when the Bernie Sanders campaign ended, I was fully fused like political and yogic.
Yeah, I mean, incredible. And I mean, like I said, of all the people you could have worked for, there was so much to be learned
political revolution. Yeah, let's go.
Right, exactly. So this set the tone for the years to come. Now, so tell us what's been going on since then. I mean, you couldn't quite slip away. It was like me in the music business. I left, decade-long career in the labels, but I somehow never fully got away from music and still work with artists. So, we find a way to do it so that I can still come and do Truth Be Told Transformation and not be in an office, not be sitting in a marketing meeting, so... pointing fingers like we need more sales, we need more radio. What have we learned, Reggie? What have we learned?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I learned is that for those people in yoga land who say, I'm just taking this teacher training to deepen my practice, be careful, because the truth of the Yoga Sutras is that as you go deeper in your practice, like the mysteries of life will become more manifest, right? And so like you going deeper to hold it to yourself, that's not possible, right? And so I took all these teacher trainings when Donald Trump won to deepen my practice. I had no intention of teaching ever, but like I took like 700, 900 hours of teacher training while working at MoveOn.org and organizing the resistance, a lot of the impeachment articles, a lot of the big protests and those sorts of things. So when the pandemic hit, the universe, spirit, ancestors were just kind of like, all right, you're up. So Active Peace Yoga, which is the name of my teaching practice, was born during the pandemic because when everyone else was freaking out, I had this deep abiding peace. And so it's like I had another level of like yogic awakening, was just kind of like, oh, this consistent practice yields equanimity in spirit. So in life, you can just approach each moment with compassion, clear-headedness, and service. And so I started teaching online, like essentially like week 2 or week 3 of the pandemic, and helped revolutionize online yoga delivery. Didn't have to worry about studios because prior to, I also didn't see a place for myself as a teacher because of my size, because of my color, because of my gender, because of all these things. But when studios are closing down because of the pandemic and there are no teachers stepping into the void, I have an MBA. And so the MBA was like, there are no barriers to entry, and you have a compelling product, and you can sell peace rather than performative gymnastics.
Yeah.
Let's ride.
Right.
And so jump directly into the abyss, not knowing that I was jumping through like a vortex into all this.
Incredible. And it's really true. And I mean, the state of yoga studios is people have figured out to tune in with their teachers online. So I don't even know. We have teachers all over the world now. It's tricky. I mean, going in person is super important.
I have a heart for yoga studios because, like, the studio ecosystem in Denver that nourished me and nursed me through that horrific job experience was a loving community of dedicated practitioners. Beautiful place. But that's not the case everywhere. And so some places are classist and exclusionary, and that has nothing to do with the practice of yoga. As I see it.
No, and I thank you. And I love that you're showing us some of these points. I mean, this is exactly what I want to be talking about on the show, because these are, Marianne Williamson puts it very succinctly, and I quote her on this: all this self-help work without community action is narcissism. That
Absolutely.
is right. So we can phrase that any different way, but you have found it, and I'm so great. And you know what, Reggie, you probably speak to people that aren't comfortable going into a regular yoga class.
Yeah.
Because they're not flexible. I mean, I feel like I've almost aged out of yoga classes at this point.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy. Right. And I mean, I've been doing it since 1980, but it's like, oh, wow, does that mean you can do the splits and things like that? It's like, actually, no. I mean, my down dog isn't even very good.
I had someone text me once. They were like, what's the hardest yoga pose you think you've gotten like familiar with? And I was like, equanimity.
Nice. There you go. And
they were like, huh? I was like, you were asking me physical. Don't you know that's only 1/8 of the yogic practice? So basically I was being kind of sassy, but and that's what I teach to folks. I was like, for those of you who feel limits in your body, you can still access the state of yoga, which is mind, body, and spirit in balance to be of service and to receive the miracle of life. Like, that's what it is, right? It's not performative gymnastics and cultural appropriation for narcissistic ends. Like, that's not what it is. So I've been able to teach like construction workers and social workers and big-bodied people. I use Prince, so Prince and Jimi Hendrix are the patron saints of Active Peace. So I've been able to use culture as a means of welcoming people into the practice, dance and those sorts of things, almost directly as an antithesis to yogic norms, which like just don't seem to want to include people.
Yeah, it's so true. It's really cool. And, again, as somebody who worked around music, I love to see how the two may coexist.
Right.
Hey, look at the Beatles studying in India,
right, for
example, so it's wonderful how that can help transcend. And I really want to figure out ways to welcome people to the practice that are not necessarily even comfortable sitting down on the mat. I mean, but you can be in your chair, you can be walking in, taking a walk, and you can still have an experience of what really yoga is meant to be, which is union with the divine.
Absolutely.
So I'm so intrigued with what we've spoken about here already. Tell us a little bit about what to expect in Bhakti Fest. So you'll be flying in, right? This is your first time at the festival?
Correct.
Okay, that's great. And I've been many, many times. So you're going to have an amazing time, and Joshua Tree is magical. So what is your do we have a name for the workshop you'll be doing and what to expect?
Yeah, so I'm doing one with Scott Blossom, where we talk about how to bring our practice into real life. So how can we use the peace of yoga, use the promise of devotion and service, in service to the times, right? Like, the times are not asking us to talk love and light. They're asking for us to build community and create a practice rooted in discipline and service, not appropriation and narcissism. So Scott and I are going to do that. We're going to have chanting on the back end. So we're going to have an honest conversation about how we operationalize our practice in real time, and then have a devotional chanting aspect of it, almost as if to recommit ourselves to the roots of yoga as opposed to what it's become in Western mainstream culture. And I'm teaching a workshop on grief. It's called Good Grief, because it's almost, again, a compassionate affront to love and light. right? You know, we have been through some heavy stuff, y'all. I mean, the pandemic, that thing that no one wants to talk about, that where millions of people died and we were mortally afraid of breathing someone else's air.
Yeah.
Like, we have to talk about that, and we have to talk about the fear and the reaction. Our culture, if I see one more picture, Bonnie, of someone's vacation, where they look exhausted. So I flew around the world, not for rejuvenation, but because I felt the need to have a vacation. You know, like everyone is rushing back into old norms, which died 4 years ago, right? And so, and that's just the cultural grieving that needs to happen. You may have lost somebody during the pandemic, or you may have lost someone during the pandemic that you couldn't adequately mourn. So creating a container where we grieve in community and then find liberation through shared experience. So that's what Good Grief's about.
I love the name. It's really great. It's.
I watched one too many Charlie Brown comics.
I know, but no, it's great. And I mean, the thing is, we should grieve. You know, it's not. You know, we can't just stiff upper lip and keep going. We need to work on it.
A lot.
And there's a lot of people that are still getting COVID, which is crazy.
Right.
I mean, it's like, what is this? And we need to understand this is all part of our planet. And I mean, I don't want to get too big and heavy here, but Maui, I mean, this is at the time of this taping in August 2023. I don't know about you, but I mean, my heart hurts and I just can't get my head around.
There were fires so big in Quebec.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That our air quality in Washington and Maryland was deadly.
Oh my gosh.
Quebec is 12 hours north.
Unreal.
That's like a fire in Eureka impacting San Diego.
Right. That is a crazy, crazy comparison. You're right.
Right.
You're right about that. And for months.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't a week. And like, it was interesting to watch like local news reporters be like, maybe we'll have good air quality next week. Yo, why don't we talk about the fact that the drought up there is directly correlative to Mother Earth being like, hey, y'all thought the pandemic was bad. Wait till one of my friends who's a fellow teacher, she was like, Mother Earth is screaming loud. Mother Earth is saying something. I was like, she's always been talking. She just started to raise her voice.
Yes. Yeah. So, okay. So help us. I mean, obviously not everyone's going to be able to come to your class for Bhakti Fest to learn. But so help the viewers and listeners right now. Give us some tools because sometimes we do spiral into, I mean, it's almost like I'm not allowed to be my chipper, joyful self, because the weight of the world, the weight of the world is so significant. Dare I have joy in my own little world? I mean, and I'm very grateful for everything I have, you know, from a comfortable bed to lots of food in the fridge to, you know, having a chance to have a platform like this to talk with people.
Right.
So help us, Reggie, because we get sad. One of
the blessings of growing up with a direct lineage to the Southern African American experience is that my ancestors had to have joy in improbable circumstances.
Yes. Yeah.
Being an enslaved human with no pathway seeming towards freedom and still finding joy.
Yes.
Right. So I'm a direct lineage descendant of ancestral joy, or finding joy in the murkiest of circumstances. Some might even call it defiant joy. You know, Maya Angelou talks in her poem, Still I Rise. I like to think of joy from my experience as that. Like, so I taught the first ever healing retreat for men of color at Kripalu a couple months ago during the week of George Floyd's remembrance. And we had like 20 black men ranging from ages 23 to 60. And it was the first time that many of them had been on retreat in a community that looked like them and they had a similar lived experience. And I was like, look, y'all, I'm going to tell you, you're probably going to be giddy beyond belief in 2 days based on like the program that we got going here. And I'm going to challenge you something. And they were like, what? I was like, when you get to that point of just like bliss and joy, we're in a majority white institution. Like, don't tell people why you're happy. And they were like, what do you mean? I was just like, let your joy stew within you so that it radiates out to other people.
Yeah.
And that is to some extent why I believe that internal practice and fortifying yourself so robustly yields social transformation. Because, Bonnie, we had 20 brothers from 23 to 60, all identities, all right. And so, like, in that circumstance, how can that help other people? If we don't hold space for hope and joy, it'll never show up. So it's imperative for us to have joy, even at the mundane. So think of it as a gratitude practice. So have joy in a sunrise because of its beauty and complexity. Have joy in a storm because after the storm, there's a rainbow. Like, there's a natural law that I've been able to, like, use as a guide for when, like, thinking joyfully didn't seem to make sense. Is that helpful?
Yes, very. Yes. And I think a lot of it comes down to presence. And also just a reverence for nature. I mean, it seems like it all kind of comes back to that. And in nature allows you to be present because it's like, oh, the flower, oh, the pretty cloud formation. It rained last night here in LA. It was like, what's happening here? You know, I can't believe it's raining. And for us, that's like a big deal, especially at this time of the year. So, no, I really appreciate that because I definitely have some people in my life that they become world weary, and I just feel like it's not necessarily the way to. It's not going to change it. You can't be sad enough to change things. Your sorrow is not going to, I don't know, bring back, all the people that we lost on, our beautiful Hawaiian island, and so I think it really. At
the same time, if you don't hold space for that sorrow, then it will metastasize.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So that's why I'm holding that Sangha type event at Bhakti Fest. So there is an alchemy that happens when the human being opens up their heart to vulnerability and shares what they're grieving with another person.
Yeah.
It's like a compassion accelerator. And then if you do that with so many people, that compassion takes on the larger than life element that takes sorrow and makes it neutral. So you can hold space in the heart for more, whether that be joy or sorrow or both. So it creates the capacity through mutual shared experience to honor sorrow, honor grief, honor loss as a natural, unavoidable part of the human experience. And in doing so, you change your relationship with grief to see it as a partner rather than an adversary.
It's so great. And that's the name, Good Grief.
Absolutely.
No, I really like this.
Once a marketer, always a marketer.
Well, I can relate. I definitely can relate. This is very good. So in our final few minutes, I mean, would you like to, one, tell us a little bit more about where to find you through, different things you'll be doing? And, I mean, you've given us many pearls of wisdom, but I'll always take a few extra if you'd like.
Yeah. So one, gratitude for reaching out, and just an honor to have conversation about real things at these real times. Right. So I never, take the opportunity to speak from the heart for granted. We usually, as a society, don't value true heartfelt communication. So I want to thank you for the chance to offer that. I'm relatively easy to find, but hard to catch, meaning so you can always find out on activepeaceyoga.com or at Reggie Global or at Active Peace Yoga on Instagram. Those are the two profiles that I use a lot. And in terms of parting words, is that, I hearken back to what I said earlier in terms of we need to honor the storm that we either in or are going through. In this space here, we had a really ridiculous thunderstorm where we rarely get tornado warnings here in Maryland, but they were like, look, the storm's going to be a beast, and it may knock down a few trees or those sorts of things. I happened to be here at the time. So I cut down all the lights, and like there's all this, and the rain is pouring down. I'm wheeling on these gongs back here.
Cool.
Right? I'm like, if a storm is here, I'm going to get into that energy and just let things go, not just for myself, but for all the things that people are experiencing now on the planet. And storm ends, I feel compelled to go outside. Bonnie, there was this ridiculous double rainbow.
Yay.
In the southeastern sky.
Yay. I mean,
and not only that, but you're talking about paranormal and metaphysics and those sorts of things. Crows follow me in my life and have for quite some time. So me and crows are super linked. As I'm looking at the rainbow, trying to be present with it, and then I'm like, who am I kidding? I got to try and get a picture of this. I know a lot of people who are going through some shit, and like, I need to send them this rainbow to kind of like break the cycle of negativity. So, and I knew it was so radiant that it was only going to last for a little bit. And so I run inside, get my camera, and it's receding. But as it's receding, 4 crows fly in, sit on this tree, and watch the rainbow recede with me.
Just so
what
much.
Does that tell me?
So much there. So much
right.
there. Counting
right.
crows.
Right.
Right.
And so I'll end by saying that there's a mystery that controls this thing called life that we can never adequately comprehend. But it's not meant for us to comprehend. It's meant for us to experience. And so when we're open to joy and wonder and beauty and community, these are the things that just fall. And fall not just for us to like experience, but for us to share.
Wow, Reggie, thank you so much. This has really been great. I like to take a little pause there because I'm looking at what you're saying. I mean, you've really given us a lot of points. You've shared some pain points, whether it was in your own life or through generations. And yet, look at you. I mean, look at this incredible work you're doing. You're gonging during a tornadic thunderstorm. It's like, hey, God of Thunder, take this, right. Thor. Right. So there's just such a great joy, and truth be told, Reggie and I just connected like 24 hours ago, not even, yeah. and so you are spontaneous and really just so full of life, and there's so much to learn and share. And please know, beyond sending people to your event at Bhakti Fest, you can count on me to find you on social media, as I hope everybody else will.
Yeah, one other thing I totally forgot to mention is that I believe peace is not as far away as we think. So one of the things that's integral to my personal practice is sound. I mean, this is a real background. All these gongs are real. All these sound bowls are real.
Cool.
So I want to close playing something, because it's almost malpractice to show all this stuff and not play something.
I welcome that. Please give it to us.
So what I want us, if you're listening or whether you're watching in real time, just shrug the shoulders and the neck to remind yourself of the flexibility in the cervical spine and in the shoulders. So rather than being appendages to a technological device, use the body as it's designed. Right?
Guilty.
I've seen so many people like hunched over like broke neck giraffes. It's terrible.
I know.
So just like settle into that for about 10 seconds, just putting vitality in a space that our times renders dormant.
You too, Tony Sweet, here in the studio with me.
Yeah. And then allow yourself to come to stillness. We'll take 2 clearing breaths. I'll play this bowl. This bowl is around 220 years old, and I played it in an honoring ceremony for the passing of Ahmaud Arbery, right? So this bowl has heartfelt resonance for transformation and alchemy. So 2 clearing breaths, 3 tolls of the bowl, then all love and grace. Inhale through the nose. Exhale like you mean it. Deep full inhale. Exhale like you need it, though. Here we go. Thank you.
Namaste, Reggie Hubbard. Until the next time, I will see you in Joshua Tree very soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you kindly. Everybody, yeah, I feel really calm, and I think that Tibetan brass bowl is still resonating here. Thank you for listening. It's Bonnie Burkert with Truth to Be Told Transformation, here to again just share the light, conscious community, which was a big message that we got from Reggie today. And we've got a couple of different shows you can watch here, a large archive of all kinds of great speakers that are here to illuminate and also reveal some of the mysteries Mystery of Life. So don't forget that Tony Sweet is on every Friday live at 3 p.m. Pacific, and keep an eye open for new episodes of the Minuteman Report with Robert Hensley on Mondays, and we also have Truth Be Told Espanol with Metaphor. So don't be sure to follow us, be sure to share, and until the next time, again, peace and love.